Welcome into the Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and today we have an exciting follow-up episode that we did back at the end of July, early August, where we talked with Sean and Lauren, who at the time were going out to the Yukon 1000, which, if you're not aware of this, it's a race, canoe race, I should say, or kayak race, where you go all the way through the Yukon. It's 1,000 miles. It takes roughly about a week, give or take, to get through the whole course. It's basically you, your partner. You have no outside help. You have a couple of safety things, GPSs, in case you're in an emergency. But other than that, it's just you and nature. They were talking about, in that first episode, which we will link in the description, about things that they were kind of expecting, the hallucinations that you might go through, making sure you have the right diet, all of that stuff. So it's exciting to have them back in the studio to talk about their post-race, because not just did they complete the 1,000-mile race, they crushed it. And we're going to talk about all the stuff they kind of expected, how prepared they were, what the race experience was like, and all of that, which it's so incredibly exciting of an accomplishment, but also it's just really interesting to see how prepared they were versus what actually happened. And we get into all the nitty-gritty about that, and it's a super exciting conversation. But first, we need to thank one of our sponsors, and today's lead sponsor is Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay.
North Bay's turning 100, and what a time to be here. From the buzz of the Heritage Parade to sunset concerts at the waterfront, the city is alive with celebration. And you know who's right in the middle of it all? Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. We're proud to be a part of this milestone moment. Whether you're coming home from a family reunion, planning a gathering with friends, or just simply making the most of everything the Centennial has to offer, our doors are open. Stay in a spacious suite that feels like home, with a full kitchen to cook in, room to relax, and a space to unwind after a full day of fun. Are you hosting something bigger? Our event spaces and amazing local partners like the Grand and Stock Transportation make it easy to bring people together. Best of all, they're just steps from the action. The fireworks, the food trucks, the music, the laughter, it's all right here. Celebrate 100 years of North Bay with us. Use code Centennial to save on your stay anytime this year. Be at home with Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. Join the party today at 495 Oak Street West, or give us a call at 705-495-3000.
Roughly about a month ago, our two guests today were sitting in the studio preparing to go on a 1,000-mile paddle through the northern stretches of Canada, and they came out the other side. Sean and Lauren, welcome back to the studio. You guys survived, so that's number one, and you guys thrived with a Bill predicted third finish. Congratulations, and welcome back.
Thanks a lot.
Well, it's good to have Lauren and Sean back in the studio for sure. Ben, just for your edification, they paddled, like the North Bay to Mattawa canoe race is 64 kilometers or 40 miles. So they paddled that race 25 times, the Yukon 1000, which is approximately 1,600 kilometers. So that's many, many times because, again, not to bring it up, but I know you made 10 kilometers and you're going to go back and finish that race. But they finished this race in grand style, so to speak. And you know what? It's not about what you placed. It's about finishing. This is like the world's longest canoe race, and we have to really put that in perspective. And Lauren, start us off and just give us now, like, finishing the longest canoe race in the world. What does that kind of mean to you? And then we'll go to Sean.
It's hard to put into words. Like it comes with a big sense of accomplishment, which is like something I've historically struggled to feel. Like I tend to just be like, okay, what's the next thing? And I don't actually like allow myself to feel that sense of accomplishment. So I really focused on like giving myself that this time. Yeah,
that's a big question, Bill, right off the bat, but it is a tremendous sense of accomplishment for sure, and something that we get to share with a lot of friends and supporters and loved ones that really gave us that, yourself included, really gave us those words of encouragement and messages and supporting the fundraiser and monetary support just to be able to participate in something that really was a privilege to experience. And just now a tremendous sense of accomplishment and reflecting on some of the personal goals that we had wrapped up in this thing.
Yeah, I don't have to identify you, but sometimes I think about Adam Schultz, who's been on the podcast, and I've forgotten her name, Ben, who rode her trike to the South Pole from the Ross
you're
Shelf.
putting me on the spot. Oh,
she's from Wales, but anyway, I should have looked that up. But these kinds of accomplishments are take a lot of preparation, and we're gonna on the podcast we're gonna go through a lot of those things that really led up to. And it's I don't want to say success or something. It's hard to say, like, when you do something like that, it's not about again finishing and what place, because I think we said 18 of the approximately 30 people teams finished, and there are canoes and kayaks. But my first question, in no particular order, and because I remember in the podcast we talked about the calories and the food, and that was part of your responsibility. We'll go to Sean's responsibilities, or your niches, so to speak. But tell us about that food intake. How did that go, so to speak, with regards to, you had to feed yourself all the way along.
Yeah, it went really well. We had a solid fuel plan, and we did our best to stick to it. We had to remind each other every now and then to pause so that we could actually take in the calories or prepare water, or use the liquid supplement that we used. We overshot how many calories we would need. Yeah, by quite a bit, specifically as it pertained to that liquid nutrition supplement, or powdered, I guess. So we, for the sake of not having to carry as much weight after day one, when we realized that we'd overshot it, we did sacrifice some of it to the river.
Well, that's a good segue, because some of the clips that Sean sent ahead of time were the packing, and this kind of goes into your bivouac. The boat itself, it's not a big boat, and it wasn't your boat. You had to rent a boat and feel comfortable and practice with it. But then the packing part, let's talk a little bit about that, because we talked about it before, what you're going to take. You've got food, you've got clothing, you've got communications, et cetera, et cetera. But how did that go as far as the packing? Because again, it's food. Usually in most trips, food is the weight and takes the most space.
Yeah, I think as trippers, we approached this like a big canoe trip compressed into a race, and we had talked about that in the first podcast when we were here. And building that redundancy into our planning and our packing and our preparations around all those systems worked really well. I think Lauren and I knew that we were potentially over-packing or over-preparing, but we talked about that, and we both came to the conclusion that that's what we felt we needed to be confident in an unsupported trip like that, to be confident to make moves out there and to lay down the plan. We had the gear, we had the food we needed. And I think probably to help this conversation, Bill, one thing we learned when we were out there is that the way of looking at this race a lot of the time is thinking about performance and speed on one hand, and then risk management and safety on the other. And so everything from the preparation to the execution of the race really kind of goes through those two lenses at the same time. All your decisions are, if you're making a move to increase performance and increase speed, what does that do? Because those two things don't naturally go together necessarily. And so, as Lauren mentioned, after the first day on the lake, when we had a quartering tailwind and we were still around other teams and watching everybody on the lake progress and move up the lake and face all those challenges, and we had trimmed our boat out, with the weight where we thought it needed to be. And we saw Paul and West ahead of us. We saw how they were managing the wind the same as us, and we could see, and there was some capsizing kayaks on the lake, particularly that afternoon. We made a decision that night to trim out a little bit different, and part of that was reducing some of the weight we had brought. We knew we were competitive on the first day, and we did make a bold decision to drop some of the weight, which some of those calories was in our liquid nutrition, and we gifted that to the river that evening. Yeah, some of it.
That's okay. And so going into another part we talked about, because you have to take mandatory breaks, you have to stop and sleep. So I was curious about, do you actually sleep? Okay, tell us about, and you know, I be watching, like zoom in a bit, but you don't know it's a gravel bar, it's whatever, it's wherever, and you somewhere flat, but you do go to sleep. Are you, do you go into an exhaustion kind of sleep? And do you go to sleep right away?
For me, it was somewhere in between. So Sean doesn't sleep really. I learned that on the trip. So it became a joke that 18 hours of physical activity is what it takes to put him down finally. So yeah, like I've always been a good sleeper. I'm a queen of the power napper. Sean now knows that. I can sleep really anywhere. Sean would like kind of putter around site, make sure everything was good. And on the first couple of nights I was like, well, we're a team, we'll do that together and then we can go to bed. I let go of that after a couple of nights and I would go to sleep and Sean would continue to putter and do what he needed to do. And then, so I slept usually 3.5 to 4 hours. You were more like 3.
Are you sure you actually slept though?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Those were some of the best sleeps of my life. I was going to say, that's either going to be like the best or worst sleeps. Yeah, I've thought about this and, hats off to places like John Island, YMCA John Island, and Project Canoe and Paddler Co-op. And these are places that Lauren and I have like a shared background with. And so that made our on-land experience, like we already knew how to set up camp and to set up camp the same way. I mean, trippers are notorious for, doing things their own little way. And Lauren and I come out of that shared kind of YMCA camping tradition, and that was super helpful when we hit land. We were mostly set up, in 45 minutes. And I do sleep, and I slept about 3 hours a night, and that became critically important as you move through the flats and the difficult navigation at the end of the race when you are really tired. But I think what it was is I just needed a little extra time, and we're just talking 10 or 12 minutes longer than Lauren, just to kind of walk through the day. I don't know if any trippers at home watching or listening, I always zoom through the day in my mind, all the turns, all the rapids, all the land that you saw. And of course, if you're traveling like 240 kilometers in a day, that's a lot of turns in your mind to make as you retrace like the day and you're thinking about the strategy and what's coming up next the next day. I just needed, an extra 10 or 15 minutes to settle a little bit so that when I hit the pillow, I was out like a light for a solid 3 hours.
Yeah, so you're not making a campfire and having s'mores. You're just trying to get in. So another.
Can I add something?
Yeah, you can.
I think we camped prior to, like we stayed at a campground. We didn't stay in a hotel, and I think that was really important in terms of testing our equipment prior to the race.
Good transition.
I also learned that the sleeping bag that I brought was not going to be warm enough, so I did have to upgrade up in Whitehorse.
Okay.
So I think like that period of testing our equipment really lent itself to being able to sleep.
What was the temperature like up there?
It got to about the lowest it got was about -1 at night.
Oh wow! So it's a bit chilly.
Yeah, there was a cold snap. Not a cold snap, but colder temperatures in Whitehorse leading up to the race and for the first couple of days of the race. And then the further we traveled north, I mean, we had all sorts of weather, and it's just part of the experience. It was really neat, as long as I had flow underneath the canoe, you could throw any weather at us. It didn't really bother us, but definitely cold to a warming trend. From the pre-race through to the end of the race.
And were there any portages on this race? I think it was just straight through, right?
Yeah, it's straight paddling.
Oof, that's a little rough. And so when you go to camp, right, do you have that predetermined, or do you kind of have to find a spot? Like, how does that work?
We had daily goals that we'd set to like try to keep us on track for a good finish, and beyond that, we just kind of whenever you have to pull off between the hours of 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. So when we were coming up upon that time, we would just start looking for a spot in and around the vicinity of the goal we'd set out for ourselves.
Yeah, one of our mentors, you could say, or past race alumni that we had reached out to, still haven't met them, but something in something they said, in an email really resonated with Lauren and I. It was ambitious race goals and milestone process goals helped focus our efforts. And I think that's how Lauren and I generally approached the race. We wanted to be competitive if we could. Obviously, we wanted to complete the race safely, but building those milestone goals into each day became like a big focus to help, bite that elephant one bite at a time, or eat that elephant one bite at a time. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think the listeners and viewers will appreciate the sturdiness of this, this preparation. What did you, along the way, whether they were any bizarre sightings, wildlife, or things you didn't expect? We will talk about the navigation in a second, but anything along that you saw that was, as you go by?
Well, first, there was just the grandness and the scale of everything it's difficult to put into words. Pictures don't capture it. So seeing that with your own eyes it's pretty great. We did have a few wildlife sightings. And I'll let Sean talk about the weird things.
Yeah.
That's a tough question, but wildlife, it's just second to none, really, right? So, two black bears, a grizzly, multiple moose, including the biggest mother moose I have ever seen in my life, with 2 calves. And not even from close. This was on Far River right side. I dare not ever go over to her side and interrupt what she was doing. But I said to Lauren, that's about the biggest moose I've ever seen. And when she lifted up her head, her head was enormous. And seeing animals like that up close, there was also a really special bear encounter that we had. We shouldn't need to go to places like that to really appreciate, the connectedness that we have, with the natural world. But boy, it doesn't hurt to see that up close. I think a lot about, the sand in the river and how that's like volcanic ash from thousands of years ago, and you're just sailing along with it, and the changing, flats and the remodeling there and what that looks like. It is pretty awe-inspiring, and it gets said a lot about that race, but it is like paddling just through one postcard into the next. As far as the, hallucinations go, Lauren's really good at guiding that process, I would say. She recognizes with her health background, what's going on inside the body there. And I did have, those types of hallucinations when you are heat exhausted or becoming heat exhausted. And you really have to stay on top of that, because if you are going to stay in the game performance-wise, you need to resolve those as soon as possible. But nothing super bizarre, Bill. It's more like, trunks of trees and things on the shoreline start to look like your competitors,
okay,
or recreational canoeists perhaps along the way. And so definitely on day 3 was when the heat took me, not out completely, but where, potentially you would lose a bit of an edge there. And so I'd see lots of competitors, far more than were out there, and faces and rocks. Boy, I could not look at a rock face without seeing a bunch of faces looking back at me. And probably the most bizarre, to answer your question, I guess the most bizarre hallucination was a sensation of paddling underneath power lines and bridges. I had my hat on, I had my sunglasses, I was completely covered up. But there was one afternoon there on day 3 where I felt like we had been under 16 bridges. And of course, there's only 2 on the entire river. But I just kept peeking up because I had this sensation that we were going underneath things. So that was pretty bizarre. And I needed to get back on the nutrition plan, really quick. Because what does Lauren say? They always start as something believable, and they progressively get a little bit more bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, I said I'd ask that question about going a little bonkers, and that's so. And maybe Lauren, you had some of that, and you didn't tell him or something. But what do you?
No, I did. I did. Yeah.
You did, and then also tell us about another bit of strategy with regards to that when you're so exhausted. and the mind, I call them the old desert mirage, right? You're seeing that it's not there, but you think it's there. Like, would you talk a lot during the days and things to combat that, so to speak?
Yeah, we checked in with each other really often. I think Sean waited until you were seeing faces in rocks, until you were sure that it was something that you weren't really seeing, because hallucinating it's bizarre in the sense that you're seeing things in 3 dimensions with your own eyes, but you're also aware that they're not there. So it's a weird experience. So after, you think that maybe you were seeing your competitors' canoes, whatever, and then you start seeing faces and you're like, okay, now I'm hallucinating for sure. And he was like, okay, I think I'm seeing things. What do we do? And yeah, we checked in with each other a lot.
Because you don't want to shut down.
You don't want to shut down. And if I felt like Sean shift or the speed of the canoe slow down, because I'm not looking backwards, right? I would check in with him. There was a couple of times where he'd be like, your stroke has changed. Are you doing okay up there? And at one of those times, I was actually falling asleep in the front.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street, and let us help you along your way.
Dear North Bay, you've always been more than a place on the map. You're home to me. This is where I built a life with my husband, raised our kids, and taught in local schools for over 24 years. I'm proud to be part of this community. Earlier this year, my world shifted. After living with anxiety, depression, and PTSD for much of my life, I reached a point where I couldn't keep going alone. Walking into the emergency department at the North Bay Regional Health Center was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But what I found there changed everything. A nurse who made me feel safe, a crisis worker who truly listened. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. That care gave me hope, and it inspired me to give back by supporting local healthcare so that others in our community can access the same compassionate care I did. If my story resonates with you, I hope you'll consider supporting the NBRHC Foundation. Please visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give. Because mental health is health. With gratitude, Tiffany Van Meer.
I was looking at the times because I printed out the top 10 here. And so you guys did it in 6 days, 22 hours and 30 minutes. So just shy of the 7-day mark. And the jump, if you look at the first team, by the way, I love this, how every team has a cool name. And then Paul, the second team, they're just called Paul and West. They clearly didn't get the assignment. And everybody's we got best foot forward, New Zealand. You guys with the Outlaws, get a dog up ya. Hi, Mom. Your other left, all these things, and it's just Paul and West, which is so funny. But some of these times are crazy because Gordon and Bob, who won, they won at 5 days, 14 hours, 46 minutes. How? And then the next person, 6 days, they were about 10 hours ahead of you. How crazy is that to do this under 6 days?
Yeah, hats off to Gordon, Bob. They really laid down, the fastest time by a long shot. They are at the top of their game. They come out of a tremendous multi-sport racing culture in New Zealand, and they demonstrated that for everyone. And they carried that title back home because Nathan and Sophie from New Zealand had won the race the year prior. So hats off to them. As far as performance goes, they really prioritize that, and they have a strong background in these sports, in endurance events, and they showed just how committed they are to that first place finish. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about all our competitors. I mean, it is just a tremendous community to be a part of. Everyone's so friendly and kind and gracious and supportive, and really just interested in, I'm sure everyone's got their personal goals and everyone seems really competitive, but they're also really welcoming and helpful. And we've certainly tried to share that with other people too, because it's just a tremendous community to be a part of.
Yeah. And there's also a difference too. So the person who left after you, or the fourth place team, 7 days, 2 hours, 34 minutes, so roughly about 4 hours behind. You guys are paddling pretty much on your own for most of this race. I would imagine probably after the end of the first day, right?
Yeah.
You're probably
the morning
on,
of day
on
2
your own.
was the last time we
That's
saw
gotta
anybody.
be a weird sensation to be in a race. No one's around. You're 10 hours behind. Because I was watching the graph as the days went by, and there was a pretty big gap between the rest of the field where you guys were, bit of a gap, and then the first place team. So you're kind of all in the wilderness by yourself. Is that strange to like remember you're in a race? This is still a thing that's happening?
I did have to remind myself that I was in a race multiple times. I was just having a great time. Like, it was just a really fun trip, right? So and Sean was good at like bringing it back to the race component. He's like, I've watched so many of these races. I've watched the dots. There's always someone right behind you and always someone right ahead of you. So like, don't lose sight of the fact that this is a race, right? Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say the same about Lauren. Lauren's really good about playing the game. Every system in race, like during execution, she was really always focused on, where we could gain an edge, how we could be more efficient. We did talk all the time, Bill, it seemed like all day, every day, about how to maintain our pace, where we needed to adapt the plan before we stayed in the game the whole time. And I think that's probably, part of the story of a third place finish is we were able to maintain the mental focus. And hats off to Lauren, really, because she doesn't get down out there. I think, I've listened to a lot of interviews about high points and low points, and we really didn't have any low points, and our communication was really solid out there. I was racing with someone that really enjoyed the experience of being out there, and that lent itself really well to not only being safe, like I felt like, and I'm sure you felt, we were pretty safe the entire time, and it allowed us to like move in the direction that we both have less experience in, which is the racing piece, about how we could push the ceiling a little bit and try to stay competitive. And we didn't know exactly what place we were in. There's a lot going on day one.
You could have been last lake. For all you know.
Yeah, we kind of thought, Lauren, because you really get a sense of like your competitors when you're on the lake with each other. And then that's all, you're right, Ben, that's all you have to go on for the next 4 or 5 or 6 days until you cross the finish line. So you really are operating from outdated information. And once the race starts to progress, I mean, this is a river with scale. There are many places where you could be passed by a competitor or pass someone without ever knowing it. So you're just operating with information from a few days ago. But as I was saying originally, I mean, we did stay in the game and we did continue talking about our systems and execution for the entire time. And I think that's part of why you finished where you did. Yeah.
So these two podcasts, for your consideration, perhaps you should do a YouTube, take the two podcasts and then whether someone asks you the questions, but there's so many parts you could do a learning, teaching video, not only on the Yukon 1000, but just marathon races in general, which leads me to the segue, because before the race, I was most interested too about the flats and navigation. So there's like in this product that you might do is that, okay, you come to a navigation part. Did you hesitate at all? And what were the variables there on the flats in particular? Because you described them before, and their channels and their alluvial, and they change over the season and from year to year.
Want to start?
Sure. So first, it was the most notable thing I think was how quickly everything changed. Our maps had been made 2 weeks before. They were almost useless by the time we got to the race. We had, our track that was only meant to be like a guide. We realized we had to abandon that pretty quickly and kind of just go with the dominant flow and read the river. And how quickly things were changing. Like there were banks falling in as we were paddling by, trees falling in, sandbars forming. There were channels on our map that should have been 50 meters wide that were now 250 meters wide. And that's, again, just a 2-week difference. So things changed really, really fast out there. And then we did get to a couple of spots, one probably the most notable, where the dominant flow was going north, and we kind of weren't certain where to take it, but I'll let you tell.
Yeah, what did you do then?
There's two ways to really have this conversation. From the race perspective, the flats is the most challenging part of the race for sure. And I don't think there's anything. I'm a person that prepared a lot for this race, and I don't think there's anything you can do to totally check each box except being there and experiencing what the flats throws at racers. It is a really challenging section of navigation that is really going to test not just like your preparation and logistics for the race, but your skill set as a paddler out there. It is difficult to describe. Probably, I would say it breaks down in 3 sections. The flats itself breaks down into 3 sections. And the third section, once you get like closer to Beaver after Fort Yukon, it does start to look a little bit like northwestern Ontario and being on a northern river in northwestern Ontario, which felt a little bit, finally, we're into something. Those first 2 sections, they are just, something you got to experience. But there's another way to talk about, the flats. I've done a lot of research on the flats, like since being home after the race. And the rapid pace of change in the flats due to climate change is pretty significant. And to see that firsthand with our eyes, I would be remiss not to mention that here. As Lauren mentioned, you're seeing the product of like increased flow, both like the rate of flow and the volume of flow. Render significant changes to the landscape. And that obviously is going to have a lot of impact on the people that live in the few communities along the Yukon River. And as I mentioned earlier, it's hard not to see yourself connected to the land and to those people when you're traveling through those areas, and to do that with a lot of honor and respect, because the land is changing. Cut banks are falling down, mature trees are crashing down into the river as you're moving through, and this obviously has a lot of impact on the salmon that travel through the river. It has a lot of impact on the community infrastructure along the river. I don't think I'll be able to capture that in words, at least, not right now, Bill. It is a pretty significant landscape.
I think you have.
Yeah.
I think I was just going through my mind, in a marathon, a foot race, the course is set, and it's usually in an urban environment. So the runners know there's not a lot of variables other than how you're running, your preparation for the running and when you're going to step on the gas. Same with a bicycle race. So I'm just gaining appreciation for the variability of the race course. So what was the highest class of rapids that you had to run?
Yeah, it's not a whitewater river in the sense of like going to the Ottawa and running McCoy's, or it's probably Five Finger Rapids, generously would have been a class, 2+ maybe. In higher water, maybe those standing waves get a bit bigger. But I would say that every single whitewater skill that Lauren and I have as paddlers was utilized. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of volume. There's huge currents. There's ferries that we're making that are like, picture a corner of the river that's 3 kilometers long, that you can see, this long snaking, turn in a river. And how are you going to ferry across that? Are you going to crack the whip like you would on a tube behind a boat and think you're going to be faster along the outside? Or are you going to try to cut the inside, but maybe you might lose some of the speed of the current? Are you going to mix it up and just split the difference and go down the middle? Making those decisions in significant current, I think like we used a lot of whitewater skills in the river, but it wasn't in the traditional sense of grabbing my whitewater kayak and going out to the Omab or Potois. It was about making huge moves in big current and trying to be as efficient as we could be, because of course that adds up over 6 or 7 days. If you're taking the most efficient path around those corners and linking those ends together, I would hope that we're saving many miles on the race that way.
Yeah, no, that's all about making those decisions. But in the preparation, I was also thinking too, there's not thousands and thousands of people watching this event, although online you can, and I know there was a great following. And of course, you saw a few people at the bridges and loved ones at other spots and things. But how did that? When you actually saw someone, because other than at the beginning on the lake where people were sorting themselves out, once you get in there, everyone, they're in their positions, jockeying, so to speak. And in this case, it stayed pretty consistent over the 6 days. So when you saw someone you knew or not knew, how did that make it's just a break in the day, I suppose, but a welcome break?
Yeah. So Sean's parents, they did a road trip from Whitehorse up to the finish line. And they stopped where they could to wave at us as we went by. Sean and I were both terrified of being disqualified from this race because it's unsupported. If there's question that you breach that, you face disqualification.
Yeah, they're not going to toss you a box of Smarties or something.
But even knowing like how far ahead the person is ahead of you, like that's valuable information, right?
Sure.
So we didn't really engage with them at all. We give them a little wave
it's kind
and
of like
continue.
paddling by like this.
Yeah, like la la la, don't say anything. And we passed some recreational paddlers too, and one of them were like, "Were you guys in the race?" We were like, "Yep, we're in the race," and we just like kept going.
They can't divulge that. Oh, the next group just went by half an hour ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, you can't do that.
That's actually kind of interesting. I didn't think about like you guys meeting recreational paddlers, because I was thinking about, would you see people, and I don't know if they maybe closed the lake off or something like that, or if they were able to do it, or if people would even want to go there, right? So where were the recreational paddlers? Closer to the end, I'm assuming, or were they kind of near the beginning, or spread throughout?
Yeah, spread throughout. Yeah. I mean, every day we saw evidence of human habitation and did see recreational canoeists on most days. It is a very remote trip, but the Yukon River is renowned. It is a famous Canadian and river, a famous American river. It's huge. And so we did see people throughout. And, hats off to my parents. They did a great job of, I said in another interview, we had a tremendous expedition on the river, and they had a tremendous adventure on the roads to get to the finish line. But they were certainly symbolic of all the support we received from the preparation right through to the execution. And, a little wave off to the side at several places along the river was, I'm sure the stroke rate increased when that happened. How could it not? It was a big boost.
So that's a good segue. So that was one of my questions. In that approximately 1,600 kilometers, 1,000 miles, how many paddle strokes? Plus or minus?
Plus or minus, we figure around 650,000.
Okay.
It's a little Sunday stroll.
Yeah.
A little Sunday stroll.
That's a lot of strokes.
Yeah. And Ben, question, because as we start to wind up here.
Yeah. So one of the people we talked to a while ago was Pierre Beauregard, who is, of course, the guy who cycled from Quebec all the way over to Alaska, and did
an Ironman, and then rode back.
He'll cycle to an Ironman and then do an Ironman.
Yeah.
And one of the big questions was, there's got to be moments where you kind of get in your head like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? So obviously you guys are seasoned enough that you've been doing this for a while, but was there a moment, and when was that moment where you kind of were like, what am I doing on this super long journey, or I can't finish this, or all those kind of negative thoughts start creeping in?
I'm sorry to say, Ben.
No.
But actually.
I was going to say that you didn't have that moment.
We didn't have
didn't
that.
at all.
You know, it was, I don't know, Lauren.
Like, I guess the best example, we were in the flats and we had a brutal headwind. So the current was going forward. The headwind was opposite direction. It created these like pretty big, like 1 to 2 feet waves that we were going over. We had rain. We had ice pellets or little bits of hail at one point. And I was just up in the front, riding the roller coaster. Every time Sean would ask me how I was doing, I'd look back with a smile on my face. Like, it just, you're connected with nature. You're positive that you're alive in those moments. We had the right equipment. We'd done the prep. There was nothing to feel.
Yeah,
nothing to bring us down.
Those are majestical epiphanies, right? Based on good preparation, and you say, "Wow!" In fact, to the point, in fact, we can do this, and as in you just, we're here, and I've got some pins and needles right now thinking about that preparation. You just know, go through.
It started early too. Lauren mentioned our pregame or like the race prep we did in Whitehorse, but we were staying at a campground and we basically had a rental vehicle, and next to that was a picnic table, and we had bought a shelter, to like a mosquito shelter over it to create a workspace for our prep, and then we had like our tent, which we were using our gear, and so I had a nap, actually, speaking of sleep, like 2 days before the race. I never do that before a big event. You know, my mind is always going.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that I was able to like take the foot off the pedal 2 days before the race was a sign to myself that we had done the work, we were ready. And when we got on that start line, I don't think, we were a healthy nervous, but I think we were both really excited to get out there and to start the race and to really see how it all pans out. And that was a first time experience for me, is like, and I know competitive athletes do this all the time. The event is just like the cherry on the sundae after all this training. But it was probably the first time as an amateur, that I had put that level of preparation into anything. And I think it paid off in the sense that we didn't have any low points out there. We were really in the moment and really engaged in the race and able to do it safely because of all this prep that we had put in.
Yeah. So for you both, in retrospect now, you have families and work lives, and this is a commitment par excellence, right? So I'm sure you've been asked this, so what's next or something. But upon reflection of all that preparation, and I think in the last podcast you say you would do it again. And so will you do it again? And can you on the Backroads Bill podcast, can you say that you hopefully, if you get accepted, you'll do it again next year?
I don't know about next year. It's a big financial commitment.
Sure.
So I don't know.
How much was it approximately?
I don't know if I want to say that number out.
Prohibitively expensive, and neither of us is
like
rich. We're just
each?
irresponsible.
Pardon?
$10,000 each?
Probably a little north of that.
Okay.
So the second time wouldn't be as financially demanding,
Sure.
because we've got a lot of the equipment now that we had to purchase for, but it still wouldn't be a small number. And ideally, I said at the finish line, I would go back and do it again right then. Like, I genuinely had
right
the best
after you
time.
finished, you'd immediately go into the whole race again.
Oh, I'm sure.
Or continue,
Or
There's talk
continue,
about
yeah.
a 1,500, There's talk about the next 500 miles down that river.
I was going to
Yeah.
say, like, this is your Mount like, this has got to be like you've achieved kind of the top of the top, right? Is there any other race that you haven't done that now you look
there's
at
so
and you go,
many.
okay, so now that I've conquered this, here's my next target?
Well, I wouldn't say conquered too, right? Like, it is very much in concert with the land that you're successful in these things. So I think probably Lauren and I differ in the sense of, like, when we engage in these sorts of activities together, it's very much not us against the land. Like, I think we've learned a long time ago in our tripping backgrounds that you kind of work with the elements and as best you can to navigate the land safely and swiftly. But there's tons of races out there, and they all have, unique backstories, and many of them, happily enough, are not prohibitively expensive. So I think, to get to your question, Bill, like, I think it's just a way of life, like preparing for these things and being part of that community. ultimately, like, there's some really, hopefully, long-term benefits from being mobile and flexible and strong, and I think lots of people can do versions of this race in the smaller races that are all around us and be part of that community. But that's what I've really noticed, is that the people that excel, Gordon, Bob, Paul and Wes, they're all like older than us too, right? And this is a way of life for them, and I think it's this experience for me has really opened my eyes to kind of adopting, the training and the preparation as just not just a mindset, but a physical way of being active and flexible and mobile. And hopefully, you have the opportunity to go back and visit these places again. Not just about bagging the rivers, though. It's more about the way of life, I would say.
I often say, the preparation is more than half the fun, and because it's the whole mindset, and because there's all the minutiae of logistics, et cetera, but hold those medals up, and where are the cameras over? We just hold them.
They'd be the one right there.
Just hold them up and take a bite out of it for us, and make sure they're real. And we got to get some. But in my concluding comments, this has been. I'm glad we did the 2-part podcast. And we are proud of you as people in the North Bay area and Sudbury area in Northern Ontario, and I'm glad there was a lot of media attention too, because we as Canadians, we're not good at bragging, and we're very courteous and things like that, and we all fit that mold. But there are things that certainly, as Backroads Bill, in a natural environment. We talked about, road races and marathons, but when you're in nature, that's another, to me, that's another level of being in the moment when you're outside. And so congratulations, and we'll have you back again. And Ben, this is a good way to start our second 100 podcasts with Lauren and Sean.
Very soon, yeah. And not just representing like North Bay and Northern Ontario, but also Canada. Because there were only you and one other person in the top 10 from Canada. Everybody else was U.S., Australia, New Zealand, those kind of areas. So it's extremely impressive that you were able to do something with so many people in this country. You were able to do something at that high of a level in our own country is really impressive.
Yeah, when I look at that finish, what stands out to me, Ben, is I think about those teams and the other Canadians in the race, but basically anyone in the race that had like a pretty strong kind of out-dripping background, did pretty well. There's lots of people in Lauren and I's life that would do just as well as us or better out there that have, that shared skill set. Yeah, it's a skill set most of your listeners and viewers have. Yeah.
Lauren, last words to you before me, because I get to see I get to see the last 2 words, but you're up.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo Sean, I think a lot of people from Northern Ontario have tripping background and would do really well in the race, and I hope that more people apply and go to do it.
As I was driving over, I think Jeff Scott called me. He's been on the podcast too, and I can't remember the topic we were talking about with Jeff Scott a long time ago in a faraway land, I suppose. But he reminded me to remind you about your beginnings at St. John's Island and all the other camps and how that reflects upon that. And I guess my last 2 words are paddle on.
Paddle on.
Paddle on.
Well, a big thank you to Sean and Lauren for coming back in studio. Again, what an accomplishment. We had some great off-mic conversations, too, with Sean about all these different experiences. The after race where he got to see his family and all of these really cool pictures he was showing us. There was so much to dig into that Sean was talking about wanting to write this stuff down, maybe get it out, get all his thoughts out of the notes that he took. And hopefully one day Sean will be able to put that out in some sort of medium, whether it's a written or audio visual medium. There was so much stuff we could talk about. We didn't have time to dive into everything, but you could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours about all the little details and all the prep work and all that kind of stuff. And so again, what an experience for both of them. Big congratulations to both for actually getting through it. So if you enjoyed today's episode, you can go back and check out more episodes of the Backroads Bill Podcast. We are on your favorite podcast players. It could be Apple, Spotify. If you want the video version, you can go to the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. Of course, everything, audio, video, and all sorts of other local podcasts are available on our website, northbayecho.ca, where again, you can check out not just outdoor stuff. If you want, some slice of life North Bay, you can check out To North Bay with Love. We've got, if you're more into the politics and issues that are happening in the city, we have Echo Essentials. And if you want, this is a kind of a sporty thing, if you want to check out the what's going on in the world of sports in North Bay, we have the Echo Sportscast, which of course with high school sports coming back, we have high school sports, university, college, all that stuff. We try to cover as much as we can every Friday on the Echo Sportscast. So that wraps things up for us. Join us again next week for yet another Backroads adventure.